Hello, and welcome to this Wednesday, 27th of August edition of A Proud Malcontent. Uh, I'm experiencing some issues here, so there may be breaks. The issues arose, of course, 56 seconds before I was due to go on air. 56 seconds. It wasn't quite time enough to do any troubleshooting. However, I'll manage as well as I can. I'm using the teleprompter today, so you may get the side of my head from time to time because the control screen of the monitor is over to my right. However, at least if you get that left profile of mine, you will now get. Where is it? You see, it's, almost a TV newsreader profile. I'm showing off my new dental work that I got done yesterday. Uh, and I should warn you, I seem to be speaking okay with it, but I warn you, I may stumble a little because I'm not quite accustomed to the new denture. That's enough about my travails. What about yours? Right, what I'm going to start off with today is I'm going to read an article, hence the teleprompter. I'm going to read an article which should be dropping in the mailboxes of both Substack and WordPress subscribers around now. And it's an article which I'll be publishing today. And it's called what is it called? A plebiscite election on independence and why it's a bad idea. So I'm going to be explaining why it's a bad idea. It is said that the most skilled debaters are able to argue equally well for either side of an issue. A good poker player will know with a high degree of confidence what cards will be played next. A chess champion will be aware of every move their opponent might make at every point in the match. By the same token, an effective political strategist or campaign manager will have a good idea how an opponent will behave in any given situation. Do anything without first having considered how the other side will respond. Every project needs a niggler, someone to play devil's advocate, a member of the team who is free to point out all the flaws in ideas put forward by others. The value of this should be obvious if the flaws aren't discovered and dealt with in whatever way is appropriate at the early stages of a project. They are surely going to appear later and do some damage. So it is with any marketing campaign or political campaign, which are essentially the same. When planning the campaign or any action within it, due account must be taken of how the opposition is likely to respond. It is self-defeating, for example, to ask a question of the opposition if they have an answer that is better than the question in terms of scoring points for the respective campaigns. Similarly, it's pointless making a big production number of demands if you know the other side can easily ignore or refuse those demands. All you do is emphasize your own relative weakness and, as a corollary, allow them to show off their power. I'm often accused of being negative about various initiatives and proposals in the context of the independence campaign, to which I respond in the affirmative. I am being negative. But please focus on the reason I'm being negative and not just the negativity. Condemning negativity for its own sake is stupid. As explained, there are many circumstances where negativity is a good or even an essential thing. Ideas, perspectives, and suggestions must be scrutinized. Proposals should be critiqued. Everything should be questioned. So, don't tell me I'm being negative. I already know I'm being negative. I'm doing it quite deliberately. The negativity is purposeful. If you see only the negativity, it's because you're too blinkered to see the purpose. Which brings me to the idea of making the 2026 Scottish Parliament election a plebiscite election on the question of independence. I maintain that this is a very bad idea. I do so knowing that I will be castigated just for saying this by people who remain stubbornly, proudly ignorant of the reasons for considering it a bad idea. I know also that I will be told it's only my opinion by those who seem to be under the impression I might offer someone else's opinion. I will be told it's only my opinion by those who imagine all opinions are equal. They take the fact that everybody has the right to hold and express an opinion to mean that one opinion has the same standing as another. This is nonsense, of course. Opinions informed by careful consideration of facts and reasoned arguments will inevitably be of greater worth than opinions that are merely the congealed mass of misinformation, pseudo-facts, proud ignorance, prejudice, and bigotry. In order to be able to judge whether an opinion is of any worth, one must first listen to it. It is necessary to know the content of an opinion so as to be able to properly assess it. To dismiss something as just an opinion is a terrific way to mark yourself as the worst kind of fool. I assess the proposal to make the 2026 election a plebiscite on independence as a very bad idea for reasons that I shall set out here. If you're still shocked at the negativity, you should probably stop reading now. If you can't understand why somebody might be negative towards a proposal, then it is unlikely you will be amenable to comprehending the reasons or even recognizing them as reasons. How do you go about making an election a plebiscite? How do you turn something that is inherently and ineluctably non-binary into something which must be binary? Those proposing that we make the 2026 election a plebiscite on independence either don't address these questions at all or do so inadequately. But asking and answering these questions is absolutely essential, because doing so will reveal weaknesses that our opponents could exploit. And if they can, we must assume that they will. The most specific proposal that I'm aware of is to use the regional ballot as a referendum on independence. The idea is that all votes cast for any declared pro-independence party should count as a vote for independence. But can it? Can those votes count as a vote for independence? We can be certain that our opponents will take the line that it is not a real referendum, that it can't be a real referendum because it is not binary. They will say that not only did they fight the election on a range of issues, so did the nominally pro-independence parties, mostly. They will point out that even on the constitutional issue, the nominally pro-independence parties took different positions. They will certainly enjoy making an issue of the fact that the largest of these nominally pro-independence parties isn't even proposing independence. The SNP is proposing to plead for a Section 30 order. A vote for them is not, therefore, a vote for independence. It is a vote for a Section 30 referendum, which cannot lead to independence. It cannot lead to independence. It is extremely likely that out of all the nominally pro-independence parties, the biggest chunk of the vote will go to the SNP. That's what the polls tell us, and that's the best information we have. If anybody has a better information, they should share it. That's on both the constituency and the regional ballot. The SNP are likely to take the biggest share. And even if the latter chunk, the chunk on the regional ballot is a lot smaller than the former, the chunk on the constituency vote, we can assume that it'll be smaller, but it'll still be the biggest. Therefore, unionists can argue that this part of the vote should not be counted as votes for independence because it's a vote for a Section 30 request. That is the SNP's position. A vote for them is a vote for a Section 30 request. That is what John Swinney has said. That's not me saying it. That's John Swinney saying it. And you can be damn sure that unionists will remind us of that. Unionists might also raise questions about whether a vote for Alapa Party is really a vote for independence. In fact, a vote for Alapa is a vote for negotiations with Westminster. That's what Kenny McCaskill says. Just as John Swinney says a vote for the SNP is a vote for a Section 30 request, so Kenny McCaskill says a vote for Alapa Party is a vote for negotiations with Westminster. As Westminster will not and cannot negotiate Scottish independence, a vote for Alapa cannot be a vote for independence. Strike all those votes as well as the SNP ones. We're now well out of the realms of having a majority vote for nominally pro-independence parties. The very fact that all the nominally pro-independence parties have different positions, no matter how small the differences may be, provides unionists with the basis to argue that the supposed plebiscite does not meet the criterion of being binary. Not all votes for nominally pro-independence parties are votes for exactly the same thing. As explained, some aren't even votes for independence. This will be reason enough for the British state to discount the result completely and immediately. But let's consider for a moment what an indisputable pro-independence vote would do if it was possible for there to be a yes vote that couldn't be disputed as previously described. What effect would it have? How could it have any effect at all? Well, this putative yes vote could only have effect through the Scottish Parliament. It's a Scottish Parliament election. It's MSPs that we're electing. And this is where we encounter the point at which all routes to independence converge, the matter of legislative competence. The supposed independence plebiscite will have taken place in the context of an election to a parliament which does not have the legislative competence to deliver that which has been voted for. People will have voted for something which cannot be delivered. They will have voted for the Scottish Parliament to do something which is currently out with its capacity. They may not even debate this. Unionists will argue that the vote is therefore meaningless, that the plebiscite, even if it qualified as such, was pointless. As pointless as a vote on who should win Euro Millions on Friday. Let's have a plebiscite on that. Let's have a referendum on that. What? Don't control it, so you can't deliver it. The core point here is that the outcome of this proposed plebiscite election is questionable. It can be questioned, as has been demonstrated. It is vulnerable to questions. Therefore, it cannot be conclusive. The conclusiveness of the result is reduced by every question that can be asked of it. It doesn't matter if you or I consider these questions invalid or just plain silly. Even daft questions can induce doubt in the public mind. And some of the potential questions identified here are very far from daft. They are fundamental. When we vote for independence, the vote must be conclusive. It must be as far beyond doubt as it is possible to make it. The less conclusive the result, the greater and more problematic the divisions that remain after independence has been restored. It is often said that we must carry the people with us on our journey to independence. This is true. But it is essential that we be able to demonstrate that we have carried the people with us and demonstrate it beyond any reasonable doubt. Demonstrate it conclusively. The only way to do this is a dedicated constitutional referendum. A pretend referendum simply will not suffice. Should the vote be no, however, or if the outcome is so questionable that the result can be ignored, we can be sure that the British state would then claim that this was the second referendum we have been demanding. Again, you or I might scoff at such a claim, but to the public mind, it might seem quite a reasonable claim, given that we've promoted the election so hard as that second referendum. A plebiscite election on independence is clearly a bad idea. It's the kind of idea political parties have when they are looking for good electioneering material rather than a way to restore Scotland's independence. It is likely that at least one person will respond to my negativity by asking in the snidest of tones, "Well, what's your answer then?" As if my criticisms were somehow invalidated by not being served with a side dish of solution. Of course, I have offered a plan which avoids all or most of those associated with the plebiscite election idea. A plan which provides for just the dedicated referendum required to conclusively confirm majority support for the restoration of Scotland's independence. But this is not the place to detail this plan. The point here was to highlight weaknesses in the plebiscite election proposal. It is to be hoped that people will address these weaknesses. I have explained the Scottish UDI plan. A basic web search will find lots of material. Excuse me a moment, technical difficulties, which I did foresee. We seem to be having some trouble switching. See, there we go. I'm with you again. Sorry about that. So perhaps you'd like to comment on that article that I've just read. I should be able to see your comments here. Let me see, where's the... sorry, got to find the chat setting. I can't find it anywhere. Right, if you pose the questions, I will find them eventually. What I wanted to do was just point out this. And remember, I was playing devil's advocate there. I was pointing out these potential problems with the plebiscite election idea in order that they can be addressed, in order that they can be rectified, if at all possible. That we'll have to address these things. The way the yes movement has been structured up till now, the way it's been conditioned, if you like, is that we simply don't ask these questions. You're discouraged from asking these questions. You can't get away with asking these questions because uh, there's the immediate pile-on saying, no, you shouldn't do that. You're doing the unionist work for them. No, I'm not. I'm doing the work that the unionists are doing right now themselves. I'm pointing out that that's what they're doing. They're preparing to meet this challenge. If you put up a plebiscite election, they will be gaming it. They will be preparing for it. So it really does mean that you have to address these things. You have to question everything. I'm just checking now. I figured out how the chat thing works, but I see. I'm not sure if these are comments from today. Yes, there are. They're rather lengthy comments from Scottish Minuteman, and he says, "I'm reaching out to share. Excuse me. I'm reaching out to share a campaign that I've begun that I believe will resonate strongly with your online support. Have a look," and he's provided a link. And strategic value, he says, it forces the UK government to admit either the union is not voluntary, or B, Section 30 is the official exit route. Either outcome strengthens Scotland's democratic case and can be cited in Holyrood debates and campaigns. Places the contradiction on the parliamentary record for campaigners, academics, and journalists to use. Not quite sure what that means. Anticipated responses and implications. One, refusal to codify an exit route implies no lawful path exists, contradicts the description of the UK as a voluntary union, weakens the union's democratic standing internationally. Statement that the exit route is via Section 30 order creates a constitutional record. Answer that the lawful exit mechanism is a Section 30 order. Logically, this means a Section 30 order must be granted when requested, not withheld indefinitely for political convenience. Any refusal thereafter could be challenged as inconsistent with the principle of a voluntary union. Right. Well, I've immediate problems with that without even seeing the petition itself, which I obviously can't do at the moment. And the problem arises as soon as Section 30 the Section 30 route, the Section 30 process is mentioned, because what Scottish Minuteman seems to be implying here is that his petition, if it's successful, would have the effect of making a Section 30 request unrefusable, if that's even a term. The British government would have to accept it. We'd have to grant that Section 30. They'd be obliged to. I see that as very dangerous because, as you know, I say the Section 30 process is a deadly trap, a seriously deadly trap. I've talked about that at length before, so I really don't want to get into it today, especially as my throat's starting to go and we're only halfway through. But yeah, it's something that makes a section, because it's almost inevitable that a First Minister, John Swinney, for example, will make a Section 30 request because that is their policy. Because it's inevitable that they will make that request, if you make it inevitable that the request is granted, then that means we're stuck with a Section 30 process. We're stuck with a Section 30 referendum. And a Section 30 referendum, the only thing that it does effectively is make a proper referendum more difficult to get. It won't restore independence. It can't restore independence. It's consultative and non-self-executing. And it leaves the final disposal, the ultimate disposal, with Westminster. Westminster gets to decide what it all means, if anything. So a Section 30 referendum is not the answer. Okay, a big yes vote in a Section 30 referendum could be a bit embarrassing for, hang on a minute, embarrassing for a government, a state, which isn't embarrassed to support genocide in Palestine. If that doesn't embarrass them, then they're not going to be embarrassed by a few uppity jocks asking for independence and stamping their feet as they do it. No, it's not going to work. It can't work. Westminster cannot grant powers that supersede its own. It cannot grant powers to have a referendum in which the word of the people is final, because the doctrine of parliamentary sovereignty means that always, in everything, Westminster's word must be final. Excuse me a moment. That's better. Still only water. You'll know when I fill it up with gin and I do a Reverend I Am Jolly. So interesting stuff there from Scottish Minuteman, but we'll wait until we see the petition, and we will perhaps make some more comment on it then, or perhaps not, because there's really too many different things going on at the moment, and really very, very few of them are having any effect at all. We need a much more focused, a much more concentrated campaign. Another comment, why do the people have to vote for independence when Scotland is not in a union with England and therefore not a part of the UK? Well, Pierre, we would first then have to somehow prove that we're not in a union. And that adds a whole new dimension to the constitutional debate. Do we want to spend time, first of all, arguing that we're not in a union before that we then address the matter of restoring independence? Because even if we're not not legally, legitimately in a union, we are effectively in a union and have been for 300 years. The union is a de facto union. It exists because it exists. We still have to get out of that. We could prove we were never in it in the first place, but then we would still be faced with the problem of getting out of whatever it is that we're in. And we're well and truly in after 300 years. So proving that we're not in a union really doesn't help. In fact, it hinders. It just adds that new dimension to the whole debate, and it takes up time because that element would have to be addressed before we move on to the actual restoration of independence. And we would still have to have a referendum to do that. So, we have another got from Stephen Duncan, our very own Stephen Duncan. Section 30 orders for a referendum on Scotland's constitutional arrangements are not compatible with Scottish sovereignty. Well said, Stephen. That is the fact. That even requesting a Section 30 order is an act of treachery, because it accedes to the doctrine of parliamentary sovereignty. It sets aside the sovereignty of the Scottish people. It disregards the sovereignty of the Scottish people. It puts Westminster above the people of Scotland because it acknowledges as legitimate Westminster's veto on the exercise of our right of self-determination. If you're asking for something, there's a presumption that it can be denied. You can have it or not have it. And that decision lies with Westminster. So it's not compatible with Scottish sovereignty. It is totally incompatible with Scottish sovereignty. And none of the people who say that a Section 30 referendum will do, and quite a few people say this, they say, oh, any way we can get, anything that helps, but it doesn't. Section 30 is a trap. It's a trap because it gives the appearance of a democratic route out of the union, but it's false. It's a false route. It is not a route out of the union. It just leads round and round in circles, with Westminster making the final decision every time. So, yeah, thanks for that, Stephen. And now we have a comment from Tex Thompson. Work on what Westminster fear, Scottish unity, a popular pro-Indy figure, a strong party. Scots will fear. Tex Thompson's hit the return button, return key a little early there. But I take his point about unity and about pro-independence figure, and that actually brings me to the question of leadership on the unity question. I'm not sure if I've said this before on air, so I will say it now. This stuff about the parties getting together, the parties uniting, that is silly. That's me being polite. It's silly. It's not going to happen. It really can't happen. If the parties were able to all work as one, they would be one party. There's different parties for the simple reason that they can't work together because they have different agendas, different policies. So this idea of them coming together, it isn't going to happen. And if you haven't realized by now that it isn't going to happen, well, you're not paying attention. What we can have is unity of purpose. All the parties don't have to get together if they're all reaching out and holding on to the same thing. If they all reach out and hold on to the manifesto, take hold of the manifesto for independence, then that's unity of purpose. They don't even have to talk to each other. They don't have to talk to each other any more politely than they do now. They can carry on their inter-party feuds as much as they like. It doesn't matter. because the advantage of this, all adopting exactly the same manifesto for independence, exactly the same, it takes party politics out of the constitutional issue. The one party can't argue that its approach to the constitutional issue is better than another party's, because they're both the same. They're both advocating the same approach. So it takes the party politics out of it. And that is just one of the advantages of it. That is the Manifesto for Independence, which is part of an essential part of what is what I've called Scottish UDI, the Scottish UDI plan. Tex Thompson finished his comment. Scots will multi-parties is Westminster. Yeah, he's saying that multiple parties is Westminster's way. Well, it is if they all have, as I explained earlier, if they all have different positions on the constitutional issue, then they can't count as one. They can be separated, especially if some of them take a position which isn't for independence at all. So it's not actually unity that's needed. Is unity of purpose. The parties don't have to unite in the sense of amalgamation. Right, I'm going to move on to something else now, because the question of leadership, Tex Thompson mentioned a popular pro-Indy figure, a strong party. That's what's needed, and I can see his point. Leadership is definitely essential to the independence campaign. We've been without leadership for 10 years, perhaps arguably more. Certainly without adequate leadership. There has been a nominal leader, but that nominal leader has not been he had not been working for Scotland's cause. And I mean none of them. Sturgeon, Yousaf, Swinney, none of them, is that all of them? None of them have actually been working for Scotland's cause. They've all been working for themselves and the party, not Scotland's cause. If they were all truly working for Scotland's cause, they would all adopt the Manifesto for Independence, and that way they would all be the same. They'd all be on the same page, and then a vote for them would be a vote for whatever is in that manifesto, and nobody could dispute it. Nobody. So this other thing that I was going to talk about, because it was something that I wrote this morning in response to a headline in the National, and I thought it worthy of publishing on my blog. And as I still have time left, I think I'll go to that now. The headline in the National was Farage bid to accelerate end of the union. Sorry, I'm having difficulty saying here. Nigel Farage bid to scrap human rights law could accelerate the end of the union. That's what the headline was. And my response to that headline was as follows. And I think I'm on camera now, but not for long, because there I am. There's the headline: Nigel Farage bid to scrap human rights law could accelerate end of the union. Now, I commented. I must make this clear before I start. I commented on the headline. I don't often do that, but there are occasions when the headline contains something that is worth addressing, regardless of what is in the article afterwards. Having scanned through the article, I don't think Scotland is even mentioned. It's some expert opining on the matter of Irish reunification. So it doesn't really relate to Scotland at all, not directly anyway. Besides, it is, and please remember this if you're making comments, it is just the headline to which I am responding. Shall we add this to the already lengthy list of things that were supposedly going to accelerate the end of the Union? None of them did, of course. But this impeccable record of failure will not be enough to stop people believing it will be different this time, just as it was going to be different all those other times. That's the problem with such faith positions. Faith is belief against evidence. The stronger the contrary evidence, the stronger the faith. Faith positions are strengthened by the very evidence that proves them fallacious. The fact that Brexit, Boris, and the rest did not have the accelerating effect predicted is not proof of a perfectly powerful reason for being sceptical about the accelerating effect of Farage and his mad agenda. Sorry, that's a badly constructed sentence. Believing that the Farage effect is real is a faith position. Those who hold this position take pride in their ability to maintain their faith, even in the face of the most incontrovertible evidence. Quite simply, it is not safe to assume that Farage becoming British Prime Minister will have any positive implications for the fight to restore Scotland's independence. Maintaining that it is a safe assumption only encourages complacency. It promotes the fallacy that independence is inevitable. It emphatically is not. Scotland's independence will not be restored by any external agency or development. It will not be restored by the EU or the UN. It certainly will not be restored by anything the British state imposes on Scotland. The only safe assumption on the basis of evidence is that the people of Scotland have an infinite capacity for tolerating the iniquities that flow from the Union. Scotland's independence will only be restored by a process we identify and implement here in Scotland. If we don't do it, it doesn't get done. Stop thinking of independence as something that will be delivered like an Amazon package or won like a prize in a beauty contest. Think of it as something we must go out and take. Take back our government, take back our parliament, take back our nation. Right, we can. I could tolerate some comments on that if anybody has any. That's all the comments so far. So what I was saying there is that this idea that some developments down south, something that's happening down south, the idea that it's going to have an effect on the Scottish independence is totally contradicted by the evidence. All the evidence says it won't have any effect. All past experience says it won't have any effect. Of course, that doesn't mean that it can't be different this time. Of course, it can be different, but it's not safe to assume that it will be different. We would be proceeding on the basis of an unsafe assumption, and that is not a good idea. we should proceed on the basis of what we know or can safely assume. That is the way to go. I have a couple of comments again. Here's one from Peter Craig. She says, so we do what he's shouting here. So we do what England did to Scotland. When in Scotland, Scotland's people are sovereign, therefore can stop all payments and vote in a Scottish government. Yeah, well, maybe so, Peter. I kind of doubt it. There has to be some kind of legitimate political process, a political and parliamentary process that is impeccably democratic. It must have democratic legitimacy. It must be performed through the agency of institutions which have democratic legitimacy, such as the Scottish Parliament. That is our Parliament. We take it back, take off the chains, strike off the chains that were put on our Parliament when it was handed back to us in 1999, having been stolen in 1707. It was handed back to us in 1999 in chains, the chains of devolution. We have to strike off those chains. We have to strike the chains off the Parliament before we can use it in the process to restore Scotland's independence. Scotland's independence will be restored by an act of the Scottish Parliament once we have taken back the Scottish Parliament, once it is once again our national Parliament, once it is serving us and not the British state. I will give some First Ministers credit for having used devolution occasionally to Scotland's benefit. There has been benefits from it, but as far as the constitutional issue is concerned, devolution is the chains on the Scottish Parliament that prevent us even getting as far as exercising a right of self-determination. So, Peter, yes, but there is a process. There has to be a process. And I sympathise with you not thinking in terms of that process because, let's face it, none of the nominally pro-independence parties are. None of them are thinking in terms of that process. None of them has a plan which involves that process. So I sympathise with anybody to the extent that people pick up their views and their ideas from the politicians. And the media's reporting on what politicians say. I sympathise with anybody who's vague about the process of restoring Scottish independence because the political parties have been vague about it. The politicians have been vague about it. They haven't addressed it. Why? Yeah, because process is hard. Process is dry. Some regard it as a bit boring. And talking about process doesn't win you votes. Saying the word independence over and over again, that gets you votes. So that's what they do. They've hijacked the word independence and the idea of independence. They've hijacked it to use for electioneering purposes. It's not for the purposes of Scotland's cause. Tex Thompson's back on the comments again. He says Farage has massive credibility with people via mainstream media promotion. We do not have that platform. Another fair point, Tex. We don't have that platform, the mainstream media. And I'll tell you something else, we're never going to get it. So long as we're in the union, we're never going to get it. So it's yet another of these things that it's pointless complaining about because it is the reality. It's what we have to deal with. You can complain about it all you like, but it's British media. So it's on the British side of the constitutional debate. It cannot be otherwise. So, excuse me while I have another drink and I'll get back to this point. So, given that that is the reality, that is what we have to address when we're devising a process or an approach to the constitutional issue. We must recognise things for what they are. And one of the things that we must recognise is that we do not have and cannot have a fair hearing from the mainstream media. Not going to happen. Aside from the National's doing really well. But aside from the National, and I'll emphasise that point, the National is doing a good job. If we didn't have the National, we'd have nothing. And even if you've got some criticisms of the National, without it, we've nothing. And with apologies to Laura Webster, the editor, with apologies to her, it's better than nothing. Anything's better than nothing. But it's not the only thing that we have. We have this. We have what I'm doing right now. And one of the most powerful weapons we have social media, and we have online media, new media like this, and countless blogs. There are many blogs. Wings Over Scotland, for example, and there are several that I've discovered on Substack, and I'm going to forget names now. And yes, that's exactly what I've done. I'd forgotten the names. As soon as I launched on that, I knew I was going to get to the end of the sentence and be lost. The names have just escaped me completely. But we have this online media. And the most powerful tool that we have is sharing. If you share things, always share. If you find an article or a video, uh, or a meme, as they call it, anything that you think benefits Scotland's cause, makes it stronger, share it. And don't just share it once, make a note of it, go back and share it again the next day. If you regularly visit a blog site or a website of any kind, and there's regularly good stuff in there, make a point of sharing it every day. Share everything. The more it's shared, the more people see it. The more people see it, the bigger our audience becomes. Remember, we have a potentially massive audience out there. We have, as an audience, practically everybody in Scotland of voting age and somewhat below. Pretty much everybody uses the internet now. Everybody has a device capable of accessing the web. So we have that. We have that potential audience. We're not capturing it. We're not capturing it because we don't present well enough to capture it. We have to do better. We have to make better product. That is happening. Broadcast Scotland and the Scotland channel, again with the names that go out of my head, and Independence Live, for example, they're producing great stuff in terms of video, well produced, professionally produced stuff, a lot more professionally than this. Yeah, but they're well worth a look and they're well worth supporting, because we can make much better use. If you remember, March 2020. Nicola Sturgeon sent out a letter, an email, telling everybody that the independence campaign was to be suspended because of COVID. That was arguably the most idiotic thing Nicola Sturgeon did. The whole lockdown period gave us a unique opportunity. You take what you can out of any tragedy. you find a way of making something good out of it. And we had a unique opportunity there to build a powerful online a campaign organization, a campaign machine, because we had a captive audience. People were stuck in their houses with not very much to do. People were looking at websites that had never looked at websites before. People were going on the internet that had never gone on the internet before. People were connecting in ways that have never connected before. Uh, we all used Zoom, did we not? Or something like it. That was an opportunity. While we had that captive audience, that was an opportunity to create that huge campaign, online campaigning machine. Nicola Sturgeon failed. She failed badly. Instead, she killed the independence campaign completely. Personally, I think she was glad of the excuse for doing so, because I don't think she had what it takes to lead that campaign. The question of leadership was mentioned earlier, and I thought it was in that the last article that I wrote, the one in response to it. I thought there was a bit about leadership in that, but it must have been in some other comment that I made. Where I said leadership is taking people to places they don't know they can go, which means that you must go there first. If you're a leader, you go there first. You don't wait. This was in response to somebody who commented that we have to wait until we've got a majority support before we can proceed. That's basically like we can't have the referendum until we've won it. Leadership is taking people to places that they don't know they can go. You go ahead of them. The leader goes ahead. The leader doesn't stand back and wait for the public to make up its mind before then stepping in and being the hero that delivers whatever it is that the public want. That is not leadership. That is, you might argue, standard politics of our time, but it's certainly not leadership. And it might do for the standard British politics of our time, but it certainly won't do for the independence campaign. And what Tex Thompson said earlier on is absolutely true. We really do need a figurehead for the independence movement. We haven't had that since Alex Salmond stepped down. That was the most unfortunate consequence of him standing down. We lost not just a first minister and a brilliant political strategist for Scotland's cause. We lost a figurehead because he had become the undoubted figurehead. He was the face of the independence campaign, the lovely round chubby face of the independence campaign. But he was damn good at it. He didn't make a big fuss about it, but he was damn good about it. Damn good at it. We need a figure like that again, because it has to be a single campaign. We're all too busy doing too many different things. It has to be a single campaign. That when we next have a campaign, it must be a national campaign conducted at national level, and that means central management. But that's the way it goes. It's a national issue. This is not a local issue. There may be local contexts that fit within the issue, like a factory being closed down, or an oil refinery being closed down. But these are issues within the national issue, the national constitutional issue. The campaign should be at a national level with a single leader and a single message. And that, I have to say, is the end of my message for today. I will see you again on Sunday when, as usual, I haven't a clue what's happening. I'll see you then. Bye.